Games are the most engaging learning systems ever created. In high school, I used to play games all of the time, upwards of 3 hours, even on a school night. Learning in games was way more fun than studying. Terraria, Minecraft, Civilization 6, you name it, I probably played it every single day. Is there any other activity that can hold our attention as much as games? Peanut butter might have a chance, but that's probably just me. So the next natural question is, how can gamers 10 times their learning effectiveness by applying the principles of what makes games so engaging to real life? I've studied the science behind gamification for the last 4 years, reading books like Actionable Gamification, Reality is Broken, and Super Better. In this video, I'm gonna distill my insights from what I've learned into how you can 10 times your learning in anything. Learning how to supercharge your health, be more charismatic in your relationships, how to create a business, how to take effective notes, anything. The principles of games can make us better at all of it. So let's start by exploring the 3 learning principles from games we can adopt towards our learning, and then we can move on to creating learning plans, supercharging our practice sessions, and finding allies to help us with the whole process. And away we go. So 3 learning principles from games to supercharge your real life learning. Perhaps the most important thing that games can tell us about learning is we learn best when we both know why we are learning something and care about learning it. You know this intuitively. Think about all the memorable moments of your life, a skill finally done successfully, a nasty breakup, or that time that you got up at 3 a.m. and stumbled upon that pesky rogue Lego brick. Definitely did not happen to me. Emotions are the glue of memory, and games glisten with emotion. They not only tell us why we're learning something, but they make us care as well. Some do this through narrative and through characters, while others like chess or Mario Kart Party do it through social emotionality. This is a far cry from traditional education, which often motivates us through the anxiety of tests or homework. We can take this into our own lives in 3 different ways. Firstly, always outline why you're learning something before learning it. Secondly, connect what you're learning to something that you care about. And thirdly, find a way to make your learnings more emotional. I'm following these 3 tips with my Spanish language learning. It's something that I've been learning for the last 3 months. And the reasons that I want to learn Spanish are firstly because it will help me speak to native speakers when I travel to South America. I can talk in Spanish with my friend Rushika and have our own little like secret language that we'll have. And also I can perceive the world through new language other than English and Dutch. Second, I connected my Spanish learning to something that I already care about, which is meta learning. By learning Spanish, I'll learn more about the science behind how we learn things. And thirdly, I'm making my learnings more emotional by using this app called Tandem, which lets you speak with another language learner that's trying to learn the language you know, but knows the language that you are trying to learn, which is making just everything so much more emotional and fun. So doing these 3 things before I started my Spanish language learning is helping me so much inside the learning itself. Games also promote learning by pushing us out of our comfort zones, so we fail. And failure is the best form of learning. Lose the fear of losing, and you will gain the gains of failing. Games help us do this by instilling a challenge mindset. A challenge mindset occurs when we see obstacles in the path, not as annoyances, but as challenges to help us grow and test our skills. I remember back in summer of my junior year of high school, I played a lot of Terraria, the Calamity mod pack with my friend Ale. We didn't have to fight bosses in that mod pack. What we chose to get better gear, grind for better armor, swords, tools, just so that we could fight these bosses over periods of hours. Sometimes we didn't beat a boss for like 30 times. We were able to do this because we saw the bosses as challenges to overcome rather than obstacles in the way. So you can adopt this challenge mindset in real life. See obstacles you come across as challenges to test and grow. Your boss at work makes a mean comment, you're practicing patience. You miss your bus and have to walk, you're exercising. You sign up for the Addams Family musical because your crush is in it, and you get assigned Pugsley. In the first practice session, you are forced to scream in pleasure as Wednesday, who is played by your crush, tortures you in the family's basement. That did not happen to me, definitely not. Games also make the challenges fun by promoting a fun frame. Fun framing involves framing activities in a way that promotes intrinsic motivation. This effect can be so powerful that I once spent a week of my life placing sand over and over again to drain a ocean temple in a server that I was playing with my friends, just because of how engaging it was. In contrast, a lot of our learning in school and in the workplace relies on extrinsic motivation, from grades or money to motivate us. And extrinsic motivators aren't always bad, but you have to be careful with how you reward yourself. This is because in the book Drive by Daniel H. Pink, he explains that when you use extrinsic motivators for something you do intrinsically, it can sometimes destroy your intrinsic motivation for that activity. When I started creating content 3 years ago, I didn't need any extrinsic motivators to create. I loved creating for itself, but I'll be honest, like now that I have more views and I'm actually making money from some of my content, it has been more of a struggle to motivate myself to just create for the sake of creating. But we can learn from games by fun framing our real life learning. And there are a number of ways that we can do this. One of them is defining a breakthrough moment, which is a really sick moment where we realize we've grown in skill in a noticeable way. So for instance, in content creation, creating this video is a breakthrough moment because it's a synopsis of a lot of stuff that I've learned about gamification. We can create a challenge as well to motivate us to grow and test our skills. We can listen to music while doing something that we don't enjoy as much. Or we could do it with others because doing stuff with others is inherently fun. If you want to learn more about intrinsic motivation, you can check out my video up above about 7 ways to get more intrinsic motivation inside of your learning. Now that we know some principles behind learning, how can we define a learning plan that helps us navigate our learning? Because trying to learn without a learning plan is like steering a ship without a map, right? That's not to say you always need a plan before learning something, because sometimes I do like to see where my curiosity takes me and just go, but it can help guide us along the way. Games give us direction by breaking down goals into smaller and smaller ones that are awesome, like beating the soul of Cinder in Dark Souls 3. It's daunting at first, but when you break it down into sub goals of being Iudex Gundyr, Vort of the Boreal Valley, and more, it seems more manageable. So we can do the same in real life. And I do this by following a 5-step process that I go through for any learning endeavor to define my plan. I call it Quest because it makes me feel like I'm playing a game, like I'm having an adventure. The longer I'm learning, the more time that I spend on Quest. So before I explain it, it is essential that you understand you have to personalize Quest to you. This is just a guideline. Everyone goes on their own journey. So how does Quest work? Well, the first step is to question your goal. Define what you want to learn concretely, why you want to learn it, and connect it to something you already care about. Similar to choosing your quests in a game. Next, you uncover gaps. This is where you identify what you need to learn to achieve the goal. This includes knowledge, skills, habits, or new environments that you'll need in order to reach the skill that you're looking for. This step might not be possible until you learn more about the thing that you want to learn. Next, you explore resources, which is gathering the best tools, allies, and articles, books, courses, podcasts, videos, whatever for the learning endeavor that you want to go, and mirroring a collection of gear formation and alliances in preparation for a quest. Then there's strategize backwards, which is where you plan your path to the end goal by looking where you want to go and then reversibly defining what you need to do. Now, I like to use nice goal setting here instead of SMART goals, which is more traditional. Nice goals are summed up, they're near term, they're input based, which means they emphasize the process needed to complete a goal. They're controllable, and they're also energizing. So that's a way of goal setting that I like more than smart goal setting, but you can use whatever you prefer. And then finally, there's tackle and tweak, which is where you embark on your quest and you adapt and change your learning plan as you learn more about what it is that you actually want to do inside of the quest you're doing. So using Quest, you can make any learning endeavor feel more like an epic adventure without ever facing a single loading screen like in a video game. So now that we know about defining a learning path, what are some principles from games to supercharge our learning sessions themselves? Let's go through 3 ways games can promote our learning sessions, keeping this in mind. Firstly, games promote learning by creating an environment for purposeful practice. The biggest mistake many people make is they don't practice purposely. Purposeful practice is defined by Anders Ericsson in his book Peak as practice that includes both intention and focus. And I created an acronym that can help us do this in our learning sessions, which I call FIGHT, because it's easy to remember. You don't actually fight anyone, but I like it. So first step of FIGHT is focus, which means the learner intensely focuses on the present activity, opening them up to the flow state, which is the state in which we completely immerse ourselves in the present moment and lose all conception of time, something we often feel in games. Next, there's iterate, which means the learner has a means of getting feedback and can change their behavior respectively. Then we have Goldilocks zone, which means the learner stays inside of their Goldilocks zone, the zone in which an activity isn't so hard that it's frustrating, but it's not so easy it's boring. You want to be right in the middle. And then we have heart, which means the learner has a plan for maintaining their motivation as time goes on. And then finally, we have targets, which means the learner has intention for the goals of the practice session. Like, what are you working on? What are you trying to make better? What strengths are you addressing? What weaknesses are you addressing? Stuff like that. How you practice matters way more than how much you practice. And one person who understands this better than most people is Lee Sang-hyuk, better known as Faker. And this South Korean esports legend has won 4 world championships in 2013, 2015, 2016, and 2023 for League of Legends. And I actually created a video up above for how he was able to do this, but it's a large part because of his purposeful practice sessions, that he was purposeful with how he went about learning rather than just how much he learns. So we can follow the principles of purposeful practice in our real life. Before starting any learning session, studying, skill practice, or something else, we can ask ourselves, am I following everything in the FIGHT acronym? And if we're not, we can iterate accordingly. Games also promote learning by getting us into the flow state, which I described a bit earlier as the state where we lose consciousness of the self and just completely immerse in the present moment. So how do games get us into the flow state? They promote the 7 attributes of getting into flow, which I summarize in another framework. I love frameworks, as you might be able to tell. Actions. And I call it this because if you fulfill all 7 parts of the framework, you can do any activity with the understanding that it can become a flow experience. So let's go through the framework, keeping in mind a lot of it is related to the FIGHT framework before, because if you're purposely practicing, you are opening yourself up to flow. First, there's A, which means attend to what matters. Focus intensely on the task at hand and eliminate any distractions. Then there's C, which is clarity over goals and rules. This means you should set clear, achievable goals for your activities and understand the rules within which you're operating inside of them. T, Tau for Goldilocks zone. This means engage in tasks that match your skill level, or engage in tasks that are not too frustrating, they're hard, and not too boring, they're easy, as I said earlier. And then we have I for iterate, which means to create a means of getting feedback quickly and change behavior with that feedback, just like in the FIGHT acronym. O for operate, which means choose activities where you feel that you have a sense of control over them. You can foster a sense of ownership and agency over them. Then we have N, non-attachment with time, which means you immerse yourself so presently that you completely lose sense of time passing. And then finally, S for self-goal, which means you cultivate an intrinsic motivation for the activity so that the activity itself is what makes you want to do it. The best games fulfill all these prerequisites, which is why why they're so good at getting us into the flow state. I remember in the summer months, I could play Total Warhammer 2 for 7 hours a day. It was so engaging. I was in flow like all the time, right? I loved building a trade network as the High Elves, developing my magic as the Lizardmen, and reveled in enslaving people as the Dark Elves. I know I can be a bit dark when I'm playing video games. And in real life, we can follow these principles by going through each part of the actions framework and asking if we're fulfilling them in whatever learning activity we do. If you want to learn more about how to get into flow inside of video games, I actually have a video on that up above as well, a 2-part series. Finally, games promote just-in-time learning rather than just in case. Games give information only when you need it. And that's called just-in-time learning. So for example, you aren't told how you feed chickens or milk them in Stardew Valley until you actually have chickens or cows. And this is different from just-in-case learning, where we learn things just in case we might need them in the future, which is often the case inside of school. So generally, just-in-time learning is better than just-in-case because application is one of the best ways to learn something. And we can use this in real life by consuming information right before applying. There are 2 main ways that I do this. Firstly, after learning something, I try and teach or talk about it to the next friend that I come across. Teaching tells me if I've actually learned it or not, because if I don't explain it well, they'll look at me like I'm some weird monster, and then I'll have to figure out how to explain it differently. And secondly, I try to have a project associated with learnings that I'm doing. Reason I do this is firstly, because it shortens the time between learning and application. Secondly, it changes what I attend to throughout my day because my goals shape the information that sticks out to me. So when I have a project, it literally shapes the way that I perceive information that I consume, helping me with the project that I'm doing. Some of my favorite projects, depending on the learning, are like creating an essay, a video, a podcast. This video is particularly good if you're learning something more skill-based. But like I said, if you don't have that sort of project, you can just talk about it with a friend, and that can be your project. And then finally, games 10 times our learning effectiveness by integrating the most powerful form of learning of all, which is other people, right? Many games promote this type of learning through social play. Some like Super Smash Bros, Mario Kart Party do it through competition, and others like Gloomhaven and Pandemic Legacy do it through cooperation. We can integrate this by recruiting our own team of Avengers for the game of life. Like, find people who will help you accomplish your learning goals, people who can work alongside you or be your accountability buddy to motivate you towards success. For example, I recruited my friend John Maverick on my learning journey to note-taking a year ago. John Maverick's a really good friend of mine in the Obsidian note-taking space, and we learned to take notes together by watching the lecture series Awakening from the Meaning Crisis, which is 50 episodes long. It's an absolute chonker. But going through that with him and taking notes on it was so helpful in learning to take better notes. Learning wouldn't have been nearly as fun without him along my side. Using these learning principles from games, I have stopped my video game addiction because real life has become the most fun game imaginable. Every day is an opportunity to learn something new, to dive into my curiosities. But you don't just have to stop at gamifying your learning. You can gamify your entire life, which is why I recommend you check out my gamification resource list to turn your real life into the most fun game imaginable. You can create your own superhero alter ego, define your quests and epic wins, cultivate your skills and abilities, and fight your bad guys. You can find my gamification resource list in the description below. As always, have a fantastic rest of your day. Eat some peanut butter, and bye-bye.